Welcome to Rockstar Doctor Life. I'm Alyssa Longo, and each episode, my guests and I will bring you fresh, fun ways to rock your life as a health professional and create a business that aligns with who you are and the life you want to live. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Rockstar Doctor Life. I have to say, I don't often get nervous doing these interviews too often anymore after 120 plus shows, but I'm a little bit nervous today. I have a bit of a big guest here. Dr. Ben Lerner is with me. I've had the chance to speak with him a few minutes before our show. I've had a chance to meet with him in person at some of the events. I've read his books. I've learned from him for many years, and then know many of you have as well. He's quite an accomplished guy, and I'm thrilled to have a little bit of his time today. So welcome to the show, Dr. Ben.
So great to be here. Thank you.
I'd like if you could just start by giving everyone a snapshot of what is Dr. Ben doing these days, because I know that you're doing a lot of different things, but anyone who hasn't been paying attention lately maybe doesn't know all the different things that you're doing. So what are you doing these days?
I'll try to condense it down for the show's sake. So a lot of neat things. I mean, one is we have a big event coming up here in October that we're doing called Christ-Centered-Chiropractic. That's something that's a passion of mine, is just seeing chiropractors be able to live out their life as a God-loving person in their practices and beyond. I work with AMC, and we have a company called Vitalleo Nutrition, where we do all kinds of different testing and manufacture products and provide protocols to take care of very sick people or people that just never want to get sick in the first place. I've got something called Velocity Coaching. I actually consult for a core group of chiropractors that want to do big elite things. And then I'm very excited about our indoor air quality company. We have an organization that's going to China, going to Australia, or all around the US, and also to India. And we are really concerned with indoor air quality. We've been working with major hospitals around the country, doing a lot of research, and have had several research projects come out. And it's all about not breathing in toxins that cause cancer, and what are the types of actual processes, the technologies that actually truly pull these particles out of the air so us and our children can be healthy and well. So that's just a little snapshot of what's going on.
A little snapshot, yeah. And so my first question hearing all of that is, how do you manage your time effectively so that you can adequately give to, your fitness, your faith, your family, and all these business and the speaking and the coaching that you're doing? There must be some strategies that you've learned over the years.
Yeah, pretty much every book I've written, I think almost all 20 have something on time management, because obviously for me, I'm very rapacious, very greedy with my time that goes to my family. So I've got, probably my biggest accomplishment is my 3 children and my incredible wife, Dr. Sherry. And so I'm very proud of them and the time I get to spend with them. So I block all that off. So we teach something called war planning. So actually my wife goes through, and this is what we teach other doctors, let your spouse go through, and she blocks off the whole year. So we plan out a year in advance. She blocks out her time and the kids' times. So nobody can touch that. I can't touch it. And then the rest, she knows, okay, that's yours. So whatever crazy speaking you want to do, whatever companies you want to get started, whoever you want to consult for, you can use the rest of the time for that, but the rest is mine. And I've also arranged my schedule so I go from 5 a.m. to 3:30. So I'm done every day by 3:30. And so that's another way. I've always got a good chunk of day left. And I've got a lot of energy thanks to our way of living. So I can go till midnight and wake up and go at it again and feel pretty good.
Yeah. I love that you have, obviously priorities. Your first priority is your wife and your children's commitments. Did that ever change? When you were first in practice, you didn't have any children.
Right.
Right. So is that something that, how did your life change, your business change when you had your first child? Because it's something that a lot of listeners are going through, right?
Yeah. So it was a lot easier when people complain about building their practice and they have no children or a spouse. I'm like, you got 24 hours a day. What are you complaining about? But once you have a kid, I think the first thing, Ashley, when I had a child was, how could anybody not get their child adjusted? That was really the biggest thing that hit me. So I went into practice, and that's when my pediatric practice really took off to another level, kind of parabolically, because it was like, how could you ever know anything about chiropractic and not have gotten your child adjusted. That old thing suddenly came out where I'd heard, what parent, if they really understood chiropractic, would not hold your office open at gunpoint before you were allowed to close before adjusting their child's atlas? And I understood that better than ever. But then I always tell doctors, you're not allowed to get married and certainly not allowed to have a kid unless you're willing to become a 12th degree black belt in time management, because they now deserve your time and energy. So you've really got to master time management.
Mm-hmm. And you certainly, you know, as time goes on, your children get older, you know, they need different things, but your commitment to them is high. And a lot of times we talk about this in the Rock to Doctor Life programs too. It's like, you know, creating a business that reflects the lifestyle that you want for yourself. So how do you encourage your clients and your coaching clients to do the same thing rather than build a business and then fit their family around it?
You know, there's two things there that you're absolutely right. And this hits kind of the center of the bullseye. For one, you only get them for a short period of time. I've got a 16-year-old. So if you have younger kids out there, I've got a 16-year-old and I've got one that's about to graduate college. So by 16, they don't really want a lot to do with you by then. I have to make her hang out with me. And the college one, we hardly ever see. You know, we see them more annually than anything else. So it's worth taking a bit of a hit in your business for at least 15, 16 years so that you get all that great time with your kids. And that's those, you know, I have my master's in psychology, and that's really those developmental years that really matter, that they take on with them, that they're going to feed off of for the rest of their life. There's a great Bible scripture that goes with that says, teach a child in the way they should go, and in the end, they'll return to it. So you've got to make that deep, deep investment in their lives early on. So you do have to clear your slate, even if it means your business takes a bit of a hit. Mm-hmm. But as an entrepreneur, you also get to arrange your schedule around them. I've always had my 8 to midnight shift. So, you know, once they're sort of settled and in bed or just kind of doing their own things, I'll do other work. And that's really how I wrote 20 books and built a lot of companies, is there's also sort of the midnight shift. So if you're really one of those type A's and want to change the world, there's still another 20 hours a week you can get after they go to bed or early in the morning before they get up.
Yeah, there's always time if you want to spend it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, you know, you've talked about sacrificing potentially some of your business growth in those early developmental years, the first 15, 16 years, but you didn't have to sacrifice your business growth during those years. So let's talk a little bit about some of your secrets to practice success. Do you have anything that was key or continues to be key for your practice growth?
Yes, I think, you know, you're right. Probably that wasn't the best way to put that. Because you don't have to sacrifice. You could have it all. Yeah. And the way you do that, and it's, you know, different for other careers than chiropractors, we tend to mess this up. But so does anybody, where they're the one delivering the service. So you have to watch out for becoming what they call a tech manager, where you as the doctor are the one doing all the work. And so we have to move more to the level of where we can hire people. So for example, when I was in the midst of parenting, I had 5 clinics. And so we had other doctors running all the clinics besides me. And I even had a CEO that I hired and trained and actually knew a lot more about certain things when it came to running a business that I did. So actually, when I was at my peak chiropractically, seeing 14,000 adjustments a month in my 5 clinics, I only worked 27 to 33 hours a week because other people had been trained. So I didn't have to sacrifice anything, built maybe one of the biggest machines in the history of chiropractic. And I was really barely working at that time. Mm-hmm.
What keeps you so inspired now to continue to be writing, teaching, training, you know, practicing? I mean, I don't think inspiration has ever been something that you have lacked, but ongoing, you know, sometimes doctors go through different challenges in their life or business successes and setbacks, and they can affect their drive. But what has been some of your passion, and where is that coming from?
No, I could almost be called an X-Man because I'm like an empath. I just really feel the pain of others. My dad died at my age, the age I am right now, 52 years old. And I really struggled with that. It was a turning point in my career where I was really struggling to want to keep working. I was pretty tragic situation. And somebody encouraged me to make my career about my dad. And so I decided at that point, I'm not going to let that happen to any other dads if I can help it. And that's actually when I wrote my first book, became a New York Times bestseller, became a bestseller in a lot of different countries. And that was intentional. I wanted to get this message around the world and save dads. And then I wanted to save moms too and their families, because when your dad dies young, we had a teenage brother at home. I had another younger brother. My mom's only 49 years old. It was a really terrifyingly horrible event to live through. And I wanted to save other families from the same thing. In my community, if I see somebody like a kid, there's an actual monument in our town to an 8-year-old who was in my daughter's class who died from leukemia. So to me, I say, that I need to stop that from happening there, because what we know in chiropractic and in our lifestyle, we can stop these unnecessary events from happening. And so I can't stop until there's less of that. Of course, now there's probably more of that. And so I won't stop until we are slowing down the process of what's going out there relative to people. Just, I call it an injustice. We have a holy dissatisfaction. God gave us the knowledge of chiropractic. We know that we can radically slow down the desperation and despair that's out there. And if something's unnecessary, it's an injustice. And I have this dissatisfaction with it. And it keeps driving me. It keeps pushing me to do more.
Mm-hmm. And for your clients that you're coaching, when they struggle maybe with some inspiration, motivation, challenges they've gone through, that would be one of the keys that you're suggesting to them, or for anyone listening that's maybe struggling right now with their certainty, with their passion, with their fire in their heart to help other people. What tip would you give them to find that again?
Yeah, it's paying attention. We just got past 9/11. And I remember many years ago, I was in a church service and they were talking about 9/11 and, thousands of people died. And when you hear thousands of people, it didn't really mean that much. But then the pastor started putting individuals up on the screen and telling us their life story. And within minutes, we went from, yeah, it's a bad event, to all of us bawling our eyes out in the audience, because suddenly there was actual compassion. There was love, because we saw the individuals, we saw their children, the wives they left behind, the husbands they left behind. And now our hearts broke for the things that broke the heart of God. Mm-hmm. And so we were moved. And so when we get burnt out or we're struggling to get referrals or to feel motivated to get new patients, what we've done is we've lost our compassion. We've lost the focus on there are people that will suffer, real stories that will occur unnecessarily if we don't get moving. So I keep a lot of stories around. I've got stacks and stacks of articles and pictures and stories. When I speak, whether it's to patients or the community or to other chiropractors, I've got my stories of real people, real lives that we've saved. Thankfully that we did get there in time, we saved their life, or people that we didn't get there quite in time and bad things happen. And so, that's a lot of what makes it, the reason my clinics grew so big is if I said to a patient, I need you to refer, it was, hey, did you hear about that pastor that died from taking sleeping pills the other day and left 2 small children and his wife behind and the whole church? If he had been here, we could have stopped that from happening. Will you help me reach out and stop these tragedies from occurring unnecessarily? I need your help. That person is a lot more likely to refer than if I just said, hey, can you send me some people with headaches?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it brings in, I always tell people, if you share your story, it makes a bigger difference for people because they know what I'm going to tell them as a doctor. They know my belief and how passionate I am about what I want to do. But when they hear from other human beings, people who are just like them, who have had life-changing events or life-changing losses, it can certainly motivate their actions. Now, with all of your travels and all the doctors that you're speaking to, your clients as well, what do you think is one of the most common challenges that chiropractors are facing in their business life these days?
When I say business life, there's something I'm very myopically focused on. In fact, I just wrote another article on it today, that there tends to be a capacity. I mean, even if you've really grown your clinic to a great level, you still find yourself at a certain capacity. So we're able to see X amount of people. We could see 200 people a week before it gets tiring or before I'd have to do a lot of extra work. That equates to, we're able to make 40,000 a month and, with 22,000 in profit. And you sort of hit the ceiling. It'd be tough to stay at that ceiling at your capacity for the next 10 years without seeing any change in growth or earning potential. And so I've watched a lot of doctors burn out pretty quickly and get stuck at that ceiling. So one of the things I'm helping doctors to do now is to create what we call a business within a business. So a BWB. And that's where you can bring in additional things to help people that don't necessarily influence the chiropractic component, but give you an opportunity to help people at another level and also make additional income. So suddenly we get really intrigued by, hey, look, I'm helping somebody with this neat other thing, like we do DNA testing. And it reveals a lot that we didn't know to help guide patients down a certain potential track for lifestyle, and helps hold them accountable to it, because they realize this is the reality. Those are your genes. This is the way you have to really pay attention to living. And it's exciting. We make additional income. It's something very exciting, and it stops that burnout factor. So being creative, creating additional businesses keeps you energetic and excited about going to work in the morning, leaping out of bed on Monday morning instead of creeping out of it and hitting the snooze alarm 3 times, but also can blow the doors off of any sort of financial capacity you might have been stuck in.
That's a great tip. And you're obviously managing a team of people, and you have your entire career that are helping you in your vision to change the health of your community and globally, humanity for that matter. What are some of your keys to success in working with people and getting people inspired with your vision? Because I know that a lot of doctors have people in their team, and it's something that they're always trying to improve upon.
So this is an area that I was once the worst in the history of chiropractic in. So I love to talk about it. Because when I started, people keep their statistics, new patients, financial collections, referrals. I had an additional statistic, was how many new employees per month I was bringing in, because how many are quitting really quickly after starting with me. So I was horrible at it. Then when I had built a big company that had 70 employees, I was really bad at it. So I actually went back to school. I got my master's in industrial and organizational psychology, and with a focus on corporate health. And I wrote a thesis on corporate health so that I could become better at this. And so, first of all, there's something, it's called heliotropic thinking, or a heliotropic culture. It has to do with how, like, sunflowers turn towards the sun. So what is the sun shining in on your business? So what is that great, grand, and glorious purpose that you guys are all about, that purpose that imbues your life with meaning? People want to be a part of something like that. People want to be a part of a group bigger than them with a purpose greater than theirs. So what is that great and glorious purpose? That's where it starts. But the second part, I was always pretty good at that. Where I was terrible was that it was about helping those team members transform and become everything they could be, so that they can also feel like they were living out their purpose. So I was kind of saying, here's this great purpose. Now, follow the rules and do your job. And it was a meritocracy where you're rewarded based on great behavior, and you're the opposite of rewarded. You'll see my wrath if there's bad behavior. And that was a terrible way to do life. And I was a terrible boss. And what I learned in doing my thesis was that the top leaders in the world over the last few years have been women. And the reason is that they no longer, they don't do this authoritarian sort of meritocracy type of leadership. They're what they call transformational leaders, whereas somebody comes in to work with them, we're looking to build them up as an individual, help them to transform as a person, and invest in their career and their future, which is a very different way of looking at it. So suddenly when I went to that sort of leadership, then these people loved what we were doing. Our relationship was much better, and they wanted to see the purpose succeed, because they knew it was all in their best interest too. And that shift in approach, has changed my life. And unfortunately, there's a lot of scorched earth behind me with what I did with employees in the past, but I've learned.
And is that something that you have applied to parenting as well?
Yeah, so that's a great point. Because it's really, most of us would naturally do that with our children. We want to invest in them. We're thinking about character development. We're thinking about how they perform in school, how they treat others, emotional development. Are they learning new skills so that they're really headed towards this amazing future that God has in mind for them? That's generally how we would go at parenting, or at least, how we should. Mm-hmm. And yet that certainly wasn't the approach I was taking at work. But our teams, it's sort of, not that they are our children, but they should be our most important adjustment at work, before a patient. They are our greatest resource. Patients, customers can come and go, but we hope the team has our backs and sticks with us forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm glad I asked you that question. I didn't know that you had that extensive background. So thank you for sharing that. Listeners, I hope you took some of that to heart and are using some of this information then to continue to improve your relationships with the people in your practice. So let's switch back for a minute here to, Dr. Ben, the dad. You've talked about your 3 children and your marriage being, one of your greatest successes. What advice do you have for the parents out there who have young children? Are there things that you and your wife did with your children as they were growing up that you think were real keys to helping them be, these amazing humans they are today?
Yeah. When you talk about my great successes and all this, I have a winning record, I would say, but we're always still learning.
Yeah.
So for my marriage, we have a coach. We've actually taught couples camps with our coach, and chiropractic couples come out, and so we've got a great marriage coach, Aaron Chambers, Pastor Aaron Chambers. He's now coached probably over 100 different couples that are chiropractors, but he started with me. He was my pastor, my patient, and took care of my wife and I before we got married. And so you're getting help from experts is a big one. We mentioned war planning earlier. My wife and I got married, and after 6 months of marriage, we were not doing any of the things we said we were going to do together. We weren't praying together. We didn't have the date nights. We weren't working out together. All the things we said we would do. And so we realized we had to plan those things. She's a chiropractor. I'm a chiropractor. She's an avid fitness person. I'm an avid fitness person. We're both very busy. We both read a lot. And so we realized we had to schedule time together to make sure that in our busy schedules, we had the marriage we dreamed of. So as we get some of those wins versus the losses, we schedule a lot of that out. And same thing with our children. We have to make sure that we've blocked that time out, because everybody could be busy, and then you're not blocking the time out to be with your kids, because as I mentioned, my dad died young. And so when I think back to my life with my dad, what I remember are the moments. So there's something I teach called moment management. So I remember the time, my dad took me to a Cleveland Browns game. I remember the time that my dad, I was taking a bus home from college, and he showed up at the bus stop, and I thought I was gonna have to be on this long Greyhound ride home, sitting next to the lady who sleeps on your shoulder and spills her tuna fish on you. And instead, there's my dad, drove all the way up to New York and waited for me at the bus stop and picked me up and took me home. So, I remember these great moments with my dad. So his life was short, but these moments live with me forever. So I've got to make sure I'm creating great moments with my children. And we really are, we're always thinking of their character and helping build up their self-esteem. It's easy, again, my psychologist side, it's easy for kids to feel like they're loved based on their achievements. My kids are high achievers. They're all athletes. We look for them to get straight A's. We sort of have those sort of accountabilities in our house, but they need to know that we love them regardless of anything they've ever done, that we love them at their core. If they failed all their classes and got kicked off the team, we'd love them just as much. It doesn't matter what you've done. You don't have to earn our love. We love you regardless. And so they hear that from us a lot. And then I think the thing that's the greatest part of if I could say there's one thing I'm getting right as a dad, is that they don't leave the house without me praying for them. And we not only pray for them, but we really pray into their future. The end of every prayer is always the same. We thank you, God, that you've got big plans and great hope for their future, that you've got no plan to harm them, because they go through stuff and feel like, hey, maybe life isn't working out. So you have no plan to harm them, but you've got a big plan for their future. And they leave that way, hug, kiss, I love you, stuff that my parents didn't know to do, that I think that's having a greater impact on their day-to-day lives more than anything else that I do.
I mean, parenting, life, business, none of it is a perfect system. There's all these things that we learn as we go along, right? And keep moving forward with the knowledge that we know. So thank you for sharing that. I know how busy you are, and I want to respect your time right now, even though there's so many things I'd like to still ask you. If I were to say, what is one thing you wish all chiropractors today knew? What would that be?
I think that they would believe, I look at this as an identity thing. Again, this is my psychology side coming out. Thankfully, my early experiences in chiropractic, for example, at my very first chiropractic seminar, a chiropractor got up there and said that his life was changed when a baby drowned in a pool during a party. They pulled this blue baby out of the pool, and then they called the ambulance, and then everybody's just standing around freaking out. And he decides, I'm going to adjust the baby. Why not? He adjusts the baby, the water comes flying out, and the baby came back to life. So I identify with chiropractic as being, as a chiropractor, I save lives. So I don't look at it as anything other than it is my job to save lives. Mm. And I look at what we can do as a profession together, and I realize that we can transform healthcare and change the world. So I identify as a world changer. So for the chiropractors that are struggling, when I've gotten a chance to interview them, they identify as somebody that's trying to get by, trying to get a new patient to be willing to get care, trying to overcome the fact that, you know, they're not as esteemed as the medical doctor, and they have to deal with the myths and legends out there to try and convince somebody to pay them a small amount of money to get a short amount of care so that they can make a living. And that sort of level of self-esteem, or that level of identity, really impedes their growth. But if I can get you to realize you're saving lives, you're a world changer, that you're the leader in wellness in your community, and then of course make sure you develop the skills to match so that you really are the best of the best, with that state of mind, I know anybody can build whatever practice they've ever dreamed of.
Mm-hmm. You gave me chills, so thank you. I love doing these interviews because, I mean, I take something from every single show, and I'm ready to adjust in my office this afternoon with a lot more fire in my heart than I started with, half an hour ago. So thank you for sharing it. Thank you for everything that you're doing. And listeners, if you want to connect with Dr. Ben Lerner, there'll definitely be some links to all the things he has coming up in the show notes, as well as their upcoming event, if you can attend it in person in October. Thank you again for your time today, Dr. Ben, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Well, I know you're at 125 plus shows. You're doing an amazing job. You are a world changer. Thank you for all that you're doing.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed today's show. Find out more about today's guests and everything else that we talked about in the show notes. You can also find all this content and so much more, including videos, blog posts, and how you can work with me on the Rockstar Doctor Life website. If you haven't yet reviewed the show, we'd love it if you headed on over to iTunes, subscribe, and leave us a review about what your thoughts are about future episodes for the show and what you like best. Feel free to connect with me on Instagram at Melissa Longo DC, and of course on Facebook. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you next time.